Hey guys, so I wanted to show you how to make patterns for your dolls. This is just how I make patterns for my dolls. There's not an official way, I would say, how to pattern clothes for your dolls, but this is just how I do it. So first you're gonna need a reference. Sometimes I use references, sometimes I don't. But today we're going with this top. We're trying to make this top. So one of the few things you need to know is how to break it down. So that's the way I do it first. Kind of break down what we have. So there's this tie in the front here. So it tells me that this top is more like a rectangle, kind of like this. And then there's a seam there. So it tells me it's more like a rectangle that then has a channel running through here that allows the strings to come out and tie here, like so. So we don't have to make it, like this shape. We have to make it more like this shape in order to get it to bunch and fold the way we want it, because if it's like this shape, it's more, bra-like. And then the sleeves are just a simple rectangle, simple straight sleeve. You can see it down here. It's just a simple sleeve that sews onto here. So to me, this shirt looks like it's a back panel, kind of like so. It's a crop shirt, but it's a back panel. And then our front panel is a low scoop, small rectangle. Also the shoulder seam, like so, with the channel running through it for strings. And then obviously our sleeve is just a simple sleeve, like so. So that's breaking down this top. So now we somehow need to translate it to the doll. Now the hard part is that dolls, they're not particularly squishy, so you kind of have to accommodate for some of this. So you have to add more seams in different places. You try to make it as close to an actual person, but because they don't squish, they have more structure to them. You kind of have to accommodate around these. So what I do is I use saran wrap and some tape, and then you're gonna need a pencil to mark it. You'll also need some scissors to cut it off of your model. So since the doll I have isn't exactly the pattern, what's going to go, it's going on a different doll, but I don't own that doll, so we're going to work with this doll. But first we need to take her top off. Okay, so here's our doll. So we need to get our saran wrap ready to wrap. So it gets a little difficult because they have, they have arms, shoulders, and, you can't really wrap around them. So the best way to do it is to have quite a large piece of saran and then cut it in half. I'm doing that here. See, oh, half of it flew away. So you're gonna want to start with your doll's arms up like this. So it gets a little hard because I have a doll stand holding her up. But again, for the top I'm making, we don't really need that lower section. And you kind of want to pull the saran wrap as tight as you can around your body. So this one broke a little bit, but that's okay. But you want to get a pretty accurate form And then even though it broke, you can, again, take your tape and get that. So, see, mine unfortunately tore because she's just kind of a bigger doll. And I probably should have done a slightly bigger piece of saran. But there, that'll hold it in place so it's tight enough. And then when you go through to mask it all up, you'll tighten all that. So like that gapping under her chest here, just take it on the saran and tighten that up, like so. Now for this part, like I said, you'll take your extra saran wrap that you have. You can also half that again if you want, just so that then it's not such a large piece that you're trying to wrap around your doll, because you're only trying to cover what is not covered, because you don't want to, like, I mean, you can tape on your doll, but then it's hard to get it off of your doll if you just tape it straight onto it, which is why I usually do a saran wrap layer, so that then I can get it off the doll. So here's our piece of saran. So we're gonna just and kind of wrap it around the doll here. And since, you know, saran wrap kind of sticks to itself, so you have a small window to tape to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. It usually does a decent job, but sometimes you gotta make sure, because it will not tape on occasion to itself, I mean. But so, see, this goes over her shoulder like so, and it covers that big open empty gap, and then you can then take whatever string like this, kind of flare it out and open it up, and then you can just tape it like so. So now I'll do that to the other side here. So now I've done it to the other side, so she's all masking taped up. Okay, not all masking taped up, saran wrapped with a bit of masking tape to help hold it. So now what we want to do is just start adding a bunch of this masking tape, because then that'll allow you to draw on the pattern and then you can cut it out. I think I have an example too right here. So when I was making a top, I made a masking tape mock-up. So this is that piece and this piece. So this is basically what you're going to be doing. And then you have kind of like a pattern to follow. So this goes here. You have a shoulder seam, and this is the front panel of the shirt. So that's basically what you're going to be doing here. So I'm going to do that. There, so now she's all taped up. So I know I didn't tape the whole thing, but honestly you only have to really tape half of the body if you are making like something that's mirrored, because you're just gonna like put it on a fold or, you know, flip the pattern. And honestly, taping can go however you want it. So like a lot of these are just much larger strips, and then some of them I made smaller to get around certain edges and corners. And I mean, the taping doesn't have to be like phenomenal either. I mean, you want it to be relatively good, but it's okay if like your tape is wrinkling or whatnot, because it's just the nature of it, taking straight lines and putting it on something that's curved. So now we gotta recreate our top, and this is a little bit different because she does have such a large, you know, but we can work around it. So our picture she's a little more scooped. And if you need to, you can like draw out a center line so that then you're not going like over or under that line. I do my best to kind of like line it up with features on her body, so like her belly button or like here where her collarbone is. Sometimes the line isn't 100% straight, but again, you're gonna add seam allowance and you might have to make a few mock-ups. So there's that. And so she's got like a scoop neck. It comes down quite far, probably about here. Then you'll bring it up. It gets a little thicker up here. And again, this doesn't have to be super amazing because you'll transfer this onto paper because they hold up okay, but especially for the tape I have, they start to peel apart and kind of like, it's not like disintegrate, but they start to fall apart, and it's better to just transfer them onto like an actual paper pattern. But also this can scoop down a little lower, and it doesn't necessarily have to come too far, because if you think about it, there's the tie here and there's a little bit of gapping in this area. So that's that. Then you're going to do the armhole or get an idea of where it is. And again, you can always clean this up later. This is kind of a first rough draft of what you're doing. Something tells me the shirt's kind of higher back here because of where this seam goes. So it's higher up here. Oh, she's standing weird now, sorry. Center line is probably about here. Like so. I am going to take her off the doll stand since she basically walked herself off of it. Okay, she's off. And then we do have a side seam, so I usually just lift their arm up. And the thing about side seams is you can make them straight, but I usually like to add a bit of curve to them so they fit just a little better. Because, you know, your body isn't always 100% straight up and down. So that's the basic outline. Now we need to go in and kind of refine it a little more. So again, our top is a bit more squarish with a tie in the center, but it's also kind of, it's cropped quite a bit. So what we're gonna do is come here, probably just maybe a little higher. You might mark it up quite a bit. And you just do that. And you try to go all the way around. There. So right about there, I'll say. It's pretty good. So again, because the tape takes on the form of her, she's got quite a bit here. So we want to try to flatten it, but we're going to have a seam, so I would not worry about trying to like flatten it. If you were making something more fitted, you'd run a seam like here, or you can run a seam from this direction, or you can even make like a dart here, so then it's more hidden. It's just a minor seam there. But since it's more square, we'll just flatten our piece. So now we're going to cut it off of the doll. So you'll need your scissors. And I usually like to start from the back because most dolls have, you know, they have that running down the back. So it sticks out just enough. And you don't have to worry about hurting your doll. Because that's the other thing. If you have a dress form, it's a lot easier. But you can work off your own dolls. That's what I've done most of the time. See, so now we got that there. And then it's a bit loose now. So now you can cut up the center. So that then you just have one side of it. So obviously my center is not 100% even. But again, that's okay. The shirt doesn't necessarily line up there. And then you, of course, are going to want to make some mock-ups to make sure your shirt actually fits your doll. And then we just lift her arm and slide it off. So the tape did stick to her body just a tiny bit in some spots. That's okay. So that's that there. And you'll end up with this. So now you'll just go around and you'll cut all the edges. And don't worry about adding seam allowance just yet because you'll add that, you can add that to your paper mock-up. Again, this is just the masking tape mock-up so you can get an idea of your outfit. This is the method I use pretty much all the time because I just found it works really good, especially for, you know, fitted garments. This one you could probably just get away with drawing a rectangle instead of fitting it to her, but I figured I'd just show you because, you know, the idea's there. And I'll also show you another way of getting this to lay flat. So there, then you just have your tape mock-up, and what you can do is you can obviously go back to your doll and fit it on her because now you don't have all that extra, so you can get an idea of how it's going to look. So here's how it's going to look on the doll. So that's kind of an idea of where it all sits, so we can obviously cut more of this, and you know, if you didn't cut the side seam like me, it'd probably fit a little bit differently, like so. So this is a pretty good start. So again, obviously her boob makes it stick out. In this shirt, we don't necessarily need it to stick out. So I'm actually going to take a little bit off the side here so it's a bit straighter. And I think I might run a dart kind of up. So see, it flares it and it opens it up in a way. So that, if you sew it, if you did that, it'll make a seam. But for now, we just kind of want to like open it up just so we can get a better idea. But see, it completely deflates this area and makes it flatter, like so. What's also nice about a masking tape mock-up is, see, like I cut it and then I just taped it, so now it's back to where we want it to be again. So I need to get this to lay flat. I think if I like cut it in half, like so, you're left with kind of like two pieces. This kind of rounds and curves, and that curves as well. So what we'll try to do is like piece it together so it's more square. So we actually can cut this here and try to square it out. I'll get back. So here was my solution to getting it flatter. I cut that seam and I actively flattened it out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to like go back through, trim it up so it looks more like the flattened pattern. So like that. So it's a little flatter. And I also added my brain will get there. Ooh, I need to do it higher. But I added the cut here for the shoulder since there is a shoulder seam here. So we'll make that line there. Now we cut. So here we are. Our piece looks like this. So here's our doll again. And here's the pattern. So that's where the shoulder seam goes, and that's where this seam goes. So see, it fits a little bit interesting, but again, that's because it's a thick piece of tape and not an actual pattern. So it's pretty close to how I want it to be. I might just shorten up the bottom seam just a little bit more, but I could theoretically leave it first before I actively make too much change. So let's test the pattern out. So here we have our paper and our pattern. Okay, so that's that shape, and you can go through and crisp everything up because you just basically trace around it. But it allows you to make things nicer looking and more well defined. So like if you wanted, you could even go through and make this curve much nicer. So my pattern did straighten up that side seam, but again, that's okay. Then we can even take this and we can straighten up this seam too. It's like so. And then for this part, if you want to, you can use a ruler or you can kind of just eyeball it. I do either or, but I'm just going to eyeball it and add a decent amount of seam allowance, because you always, for doll clothes, you always want a little more seam allowance than you think, because you can always trim seam allowance away, but you can never really add seam allowance. So that is one thing to note. And again, this isn't perfect because I probably should be using a ruler. But I always just add a little more than needed. So there's that. So now I'll just repeat with the back. One thing to note about back pieces is you never want to and I mean any piece that you're going to put on a fold, you don't want to add seam allowance to that fold because it'll make it wider. So remember, if you're going to put something on the fold, don't add seam allowance there. So this is what your two pieces will look like. And And now you have your pattern. Now you just gotta like sew it together and test to see if it works. So I'm gonna do that off camera. Otherwise, this is gonna be really, really long. Okay, so here's the quickly made mock-up shirt. I want to say I think it's pretty close to our reference. So here's our reference again. Again, it's not phenomenally close. I did the best that I could, but it's pretty close. I will show you guys that I did make an edit to it. So I'm going to take the shirt off and show you. So here's the flat of it. It's different from our top. So as you can see, or you guys probably already had noticed, this is far too long than this. But in order to get enough gather here in the front, this has to be longer. So what I did was, here's the little piece that I chopped off of my muslin mock-up. So that's all I chopped off. So that's why we always want to make a muslin mock-up, because then you can see things that you might not see in your drawn pattern, and then you can go back to your draw pattern and just remove what you took away. And that's kind of basically how you can make a pattern. It's simple, complicated, kind of depends on what you're making. But that's it.